So today's video is all about shelters. We're going to get into 3 types of shelters that you guys can choose from when you're going to start backpacking and how to find the right one for you. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. I'm going to get back into editing and let's get to it. All right, so today's video is all about shelters. And the first shelter we're going to talk about is the one I'm setting up right now, which is my hammock from hammockgear.com. It is the one that I've carried now for several years. So it's my shelter of choice and one of your options when you begin to start backpacking. So we're going to set this up real quick and then go over just a few things about it before we move on to our next shelter. So this is my hammock, and it is one of your shelter choices. It is my shelter of choice, is my hammock. I don't have the tarp on it right now, but it would have a tarp going over the hammock that would be conjoined with both trees. It's a 12-foot tarp, so it goes over about 8 inches on both sides when the hammock is completely set up. And this is my shelter of choice. It sets up fast. It is easy to deal with. I don't need a sleeping pad. I actually have an under quilt, which I don't have with me, but that goes underneath of the hammock, and then a quilt that goes inside the hammock with me. So I'm 360 degrees insulated all year long, and I have slept in this configuration all the way down to about 25 degrees. But it's lightweight. It comes in at about 2.5 pounds by the time I've got the hammock, the suspension, the tarp, and then my quilts come in at about 12 ounces to 16 ounces a piece. So there really is not a humongous weight difference between a hammock and a tent, but this is what I prefer myself, because most places that I am going are going to have lots of trees, kind of like the area we're sitting in. We're at a park very close to my house, and so I don't really need the tent most of the time. I know most people kind of doubt if they could sleep in this good. This hammock is actually designed to kind of sleep diagonal in, so you sleep in this completely flat. So it's not what most people think. This particular setup is a kit you can buy from hammockgear.com, and I'll put a link down below in the description box. When you're inside one of these hammocks, as you can see, you can position yourself where you're almost completely flat, and there is plenty of material in here. And the other thing that I hear a lot is their weight rating. I weigh 250 pounds, and I have no problem with this hammock whatsoever. It's completely comfortable. I'm completely flat right now, and I do not get claustrophobic. As you can see, it's got plenty of bug net that goes around it. So this is my shelter of choice. Now, if I'm going somewhere that doesn't have a lot of trees, then I'm probably going to think real hard before I bring this as my only shelter, because you need a set of trees that's roughly 10 to 11 to 12 feet apart to set this up properly. And I have never really had a hard time finding a place to get it set up. In fact, I found some pretty cool places to set it up, especially on the AT. So those are all things to consider. And again, I will put some more information on this particular kit in the description box, so you guys can go look at it yourself and see what you think. All right, so the next shelter that we're going to be setting up is my 6 Moons Design Lunar Solo. This is a one-man trekking pole or non-freestanding tent. So it's going to use my trekking pole instead of having its own tent poles. So the idea here is that you put the trekking pole in the designated spot on the tent, and then you're going to pull the tent tight to the stakes in order to hold it up. Now, the way that you do this is you start by staking out 4 corners, then putting the trekking pole in, then staking the vestibule out and tightening it all up. It can take a little bit of practice before you get this process down pat, so it does have a learning curve. This is the smallest tent that I own, so I wouldn't suggest this for anyone over 6 foot. However, this tent has a lot to offer. It can be found on the used market really inexpensive, or you can sometimes find it on sale at 6 Moons Designs. So we're going to get this set up, and then I'll kind of give you guys a few pointers on this type of shelter and the pros and cons that are going to go along with it.
And again, I will put information on this particular shelter that I own down in the description box if you guys decide that you want to go get some more information on it, or you're considering a tent like this for your shelter.
So this shelter option is a one-man tent. This is a non-freestanding tent, which if you watch me setting it up, you'll notice there are no tent poles, just my trekking pole. And the way that works is the tent gets staked out on all four corners. You bring up the center, or whatever part of the tent is designated for the trekking pole, and then you tighten everything up and you end up with what you see here, which is actually pretty sturdy. This is going to be an ultralight option. This tent weighs less than a pound. However, it does take some practice to get to where you can set it up proficiently time after time. All right, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of room in this tent. If I completely get inside it here, I can lay down in it. Now, normally I would have a sleeping pad in here, my sleeping bag, and there is a little bit of room on the outside of it that where you could put your gear in the vestibule and still keep it dry. But it's not the roomiest option. If you're someone that gets claustrophobic, you can see it's already touching my face if I roll over to the left too much. And you've got to sleep pretty close over here to have any headroom in this tent too. So it's a simple option, but it can also be a complicated option to learn how to set up proficiently. It takes a little bit of practice.
All right, and our last shelter we're going to look at, this is it's a semi-freestanding tent, but we're going to call it a freestanding tent because they're pretty similar. Anyways, this is the Mountain Hardware Strato II. So it is my freestanding setup of choice that I have. It is a two-man tent, not a one-man tent. It does require some stakes to hold the vestibules out and the floor of the tent, but it is a semi-freestanding tent, which means it has its own tent poles. It's also a two-layer tent, so it has an inner tent as well as a rain fly. So there are a few more options when setting up a tent like this, and it's the most common tent you're probably going to run into with weekend backpackers. It's going to be what's commonly sold in most stores, and it's going to be the most familiar to most people. So it's still a great option. This is still a really light tent. It's pretty self-explanatory to set up, not super difficult. It's just got more parts than the non-freestanding tent. And it's going to be a little bit better at managing condensation and things like that, and it's going to offer you a ton more room.
So this option is a two-man semi-freestanding backpacking tent. I'm saying it's a semi-freestanding because this tent does require a couple of stakes. If you saw me putting it together, it's going to need a stake on the backs. So two without the rain fly. Once you get the rain fly on, you're going to need to put one on either side of the vestibule. Other than that, this tent has two layers. So it has a bug net layer with the floor, and then it has a rain fly. So it's a two-piece freestanding, semi-freestanding tent because it supports itself with the poles. There's no trekking pole or anything like that needed. You guys watch me put the poles together. So that's the primary difference between those two tents. This tent doesn't need anything but its own structure and then to be staked out. So that's what makes it semi-freestanding. If it were a freestanding tent, it wouldn't need any stakes at all to hold it in its full open position. However, this one does take a few, so it is actually a semi-freestanding tent. And this one is the Mountain Hardware Strato II, so it is a two-man tent. It's got enough space in the floor to fit two 25-inch wide pads. That's why I have it, so two adults can comfortably sleep inside it. This tent is going to offer, because of its own pole structure and its two-layer system, when you lay down in this tent, you can see I've got a lot more room. My head's not up against the inner body of the tent. So that's why some people do prefer these tents, and they tend to be a favorite of people that want to have a little bit more room. However, if you have two adults with you, you're still not going to get your gear inside this tent. But as you can see, having a two-layer system is beneficial when it comes to condensation. maybe you want to sleep one night without the fly on because you're not going to get any rain or weather. So there are some advantages to these tents, just like there's some advantages to the non-freestanding tent. But again, this isn't a tent review. This is just me explaining the different types of shelters that you're going to have available to you when you start backpacking. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys go down in the description box and visit some of these sites that I've added for you guys to go look at some of this equipment that I've shown you and explained to you. And I hope it leads you to kind of research other types of equipment that may also be a good fit for you in your journey to backpacking. And if you did enjoy this video, I would appreciate it if you guys would subscribe to the channel, and that helps me out a lot. And then follow along with the rest of this series, because we got a ton more videos to go through, and we're going to keep continuing to dive into some things that you're going to want to know so you can become a great backpacker.